Greetings, humans. You have entered the Command Zone, your destination for all aspects of Elder Dragon Highlander. Enjoy your stay.
Drum roll for the music. Welcome to the Command Zone, everybody. I'm your host, Jimmy Wong.
How's it? It's Josh Lee Quiet. You're getting more like Michael Buffer, who does all the let's get ready to Command Zone.
Yeah, let's get ready. Didn't he patent that and now he's just a billionaire because of it?
Yeah, he trademarked it.
And he's the one that still announces it, right? When he goes into the ring and the big...
Yeah, he does. You know, the funny thing is his brother, Bruce Buffer, does the UFC.
Buffer. Oh, really?
Yeah, except for Bruce came up with the worst version of Let's Get Ready to Rumble, because Let's Get Ready to Rumble is pretty good and it's famous. Here's Bruce Buffer's for the UFC. It's time.
That's it?
That's it.
It's time?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's how we should open the show from now on.
So
unless that's trademarked.
His brother came up with Let's Get Ready to Rumble. He literally invented that phrase as and Bruce, the best he could come up with it was, it's time. So, sorry, Bruce, if you listen to the show, which I'm assuming that you do, you got to come up with a better line.
Yeah.
Just doesn't work on a t-shirt. Let's Get Ready to Rumble works on a t-shirt.
That's awesome.
You can't wear a t-shirt that says, it's time.
Yeah, and also Let's Get Ready to Rumble has like a passage through it. Like, let's go. Like, it amps up to that last word. And like, Rumble. Like, yeah, let's do it. It's time. Like,
it's
for what?
You could see the UFC was like, let's get that Ready to Rumble guy. And he's like, nah, I'm busy with boxing. And they're like, let's get his brother.
Or his brother sent in his resume like, I can do it too, guys.
I got basically the same voice.
What if it was like, it's time to tumble?
It's time to tumble.
Everyone's like, yay! This is the fanciest UFC fight ever.
All right, so
so that has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about today, because we're going back to the Color Wheel series. Woo! Black is up today.
Is there our last? Oh no, we haven't done.
No,
blue.
We haven't done blue. Blue. We always seem to save blue for last, and we did this for the color, top 10 colors as well.
Because blue's hard.
Blue is hard. It's going to be probably the longest of all the color wheels. Black, actually, I had a lot of fun writing this because I didn't realize how awesome black is.
Yeah, you know, when I was going over the notes and we were talking about it, it actually made me want to play black more than I do now.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah, because I realized, wow, black does a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So.
And it's very, I think, like from a flavor standpoint too, it's very concrete, and it's like, oh, I get why black can do this. Mm-hmm. Whereas some things may feel like it's more like red. I feel like has always been hard for R&D a little more, because now they're getting into like, oh, red is also passionate and about love and stuff. Before it was just like goblins and attack them to the face.
Right, and burn them.
Yeah, so black has a lot more deepness to it, and that's why I like Liliana's storyline as well as my favorite of the 5.
Yeah, Lily's pretty cool.
Super necro, literally and figuratively.
I always play a necromancer or the equivalent in every role-playing game, so I should love black already.
Like
but
a warlock or whatever.
I mean, I did like black, but I was like, oh, I need to love black.
Yeah, for sure.
So before we get into that, the Community Cup is over.
It's over.
You have already done it.
We've done it. I don't know if I've won or not.
I'm assuming that you have.
Yeah, I was actually talking anonymously to an R&D member today, and they were like, we're just there to have fun. You guys are probably better at Modo than we are. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm better at Magic Online than you are.
I'm pretty sure Yoel Larson is.
Yeah, Yoel Larson, all the streamers that do it for a living.
Kenji, Doc.
Yeah.
You guys are going to have to lean on them. You're good. You'll be fine.
I know. I mean, really excited. As in, like, I
were excited.
Super excited.
Yeah.
Now I'm bummed that it's over.
When I said you will be fine, I meant you were fine.
Yeah, exactly. I was fine. I performed well.
Question mark? I'm Ron Burgundy.
Yeah, so Community Cup was over. I believe you can still watch all the highlights and the replay of it on twitch.tv/magic.
If you can't tell, we record this show early.
Yeah.
But when you listen to it, the Community Cup will have already happened, but we're in this nice little window where for us, it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, but we're theorizing. We're looking into the future, which is not something black does. to try and bring it back.
Good segue.
That's a blue segment. Yeah. So if you guys have listened to our other Color Wheel episodes, it's pretty simple. We just break down a color and we talk about its use in EDH, how to have the most fun with it, and sort of talk about the philosophy of what it's about, and go into cards that we think really represent it, talk about the allied and enemy colors as well. and sort of wrap it all up with how to best use it in EDH and commanders that we want to use in black.
I always start by saying too that even if you're not super interested in the Vorthosy aspects of why a color works the way it works, it actually does help your gameplay, because it's just impossible, especially in our format, to know every card that exists in the history of Magic and every card that your opponent may have or may use against you. But if you know the color wheel pretty well, you know what's possible, then you can play around cards and effects even though you don't know about the specific cards and effects.
Yeah, and you just may have a better idea of what someone's game plan is. For instance, playing against a mono black deck, they're going to want to use their graveyard in some way. Like, it's almost a guarantee that, hey, they're discarding a giant creature in their graveyard. Why would they ever do that?
They're going to bring it back out.
Yeah.
For free or cheap.
Actually, I think mono black is it the strongest of the mono? I mean, maybe mono blue.
I believe that mono black is the strongest of the mono colors. And EDH Rec, when Donald Miner was on, that did bear out. Mono black was the most popular of the mono colors.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about this, but black, just as far as what its toolbox looks like, is probably bigger than any of the other colors.
Yeah, it's pretty expansive. It has access to all of the stuff, and it's also focused on some of the more important stuff, like removal.
Right.
And we see that across all the formats. So if you guys don't know, Magic the Gathering was designed and created by a guy named Richard Garfield, and he specifically, one of the big things he wanted to do was have 5 colors, and they would all interact differently, and they'd all represent something as well. And it's the color wheel, color pie. The colors are organized on the back of a card such that the colors next to the color have a related philosophy, and the colors across the way from it in the pentagonal shape have an opposite philosophy. So
yeah, we called these the allied colors and the enemy colors.
Yeah, and you can also get shards and wedges and all that stuff, and the mana sources while you're at it.
Hi, Wedge.
Hi, Wedge. Do you still listen to Wedge? Please tell me you do.
Probably not.
Probably.
He's a busy guy.
Yeah, exactly. Wedge.
He's busy trying to help us make have lands happen.
Yeah, thanks, Wedge, for your support. I'm assuming that at this point we have. By the way, for all the people tweeting at us, thank you. It's been awesome.
Hey, we got really good response to have lands.
Yeah.
I think the next step is for everybody who tweeted at us to start tweeting it at like Wedge and maybe the professor,
Marshall.
Maybe Marshall. Let's just get it out there. I think we can make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. Put Randy Bueller, Rich Hagan, Tim Willoughby, Riley Knight, all the commentators. Put them on the line. Simon Gertzen. Let them know. Have lands.
I'm gonna also assume that. Let me rephrase that. Good job at the Community Cup, Jimmy, in getting Havelands out there to the public.
Because we did play Battle for Zendikar, as soon as I cracked open that booster pack and saw a Haveland in there, I raised it above my head and looked directly at the camera and went, look at this Haveland.
Now if you open a booster pack with a Haveland in it, you're going to have to do that.
I have to do that, yeah. I'm submitting myself to it. We will see in retrospect what ends up happening. I think we're doing a sealed one of the days, so there's a very high chance.
I think you got a sealed and a draft.
Yeah, there's a very good chance I will open it. And then I don't know what I'll do. I don't even know if coverage will catch it. Do you just see like everyone looking at their computers and I stand up out of frame and yell something? And
the camera just has a way of finding you, Jimmy Wong. I'm pretty sure it'll happen.
Yeah, it does end up happening. Back again to the color wheel. So the nice thing, like we were talking about earlier, knowing how to play around the color or what's in the color is consistent because Wizards R&D wants to make sure that they adhere to the color wheel. Because if they sort of did not want to design with this in mind and just like threw it out the window, the game would be a total mess. There would be very little structure. It'd be really hard to draft too, I think.
I think the color wheel, and Morrow has said this, and we've said this on the other episodes, it's really the defining characteristic of what makes Magic what it is.
Yeah.
Is just the way the colors work, the fact that each color has its own separate philosophy. It gives the game like this feel that is very authentic, very deep, and also it's one of those games where it takes a few seconds to learn, but a lifetime to master, and that's one of the reasons that it's like that.
Yeah, and 5 is a really good number too. I think that is the right number for this kind of game. It's interesting because 4 to 5 is also the best in the multiplayer format. There is because we were talking about this the other night. 4-player games sometimes end up being 2v2, and 5-player games just has that nice extra bit of one extra person in the 4-person group to make it 5, and it's much more balanced. So
and the dynamic of it is very good. Whereas you start getting 6 and 7, and then it's too complex.
Yeah,
So it's that nice little wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Color wheelhouse.
And having odd numbers is very important.
Right.
People keep being like, add purple as a color. I'm like, what? No. Keep it to 5.
Then again, you get into the 3v3 aspect in multiplayer and sort of similar problems, I think, when you're designing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Mark Rosewater is the current head designer for R&D at Wizards, and he's written a ton of articles on these colors. So we pulled a lot of our information from this, and also just from like what EDH staples are in the format and what are really powerful for our game. And so we're just skimming the surface here. There's a lot more to talk about, and Mark Rosewater actually revisited all his original articles on the color wheel. So we'll include those links as well in the show notes. So you guys can read all of those. And my favorite part of those is when he chooses what characters in real life and fiction and stuff are those characters. So
he also has the Drive to Work podcast where he talks about the color wheel extensively. So that's another thing to check out.
You know, I heard something crazy about that podcast. To again get off topic slightly, if he'll let himself have like 3 to 4 mistakes, but if he makes more than that, he just starts the whole thing over.
Like he just scraps it.
He scraps it and starts over. He doesn't even go in and because he just wants to hit upload. I guess when he gets to wherever.
You know, if he had an Eli.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have to be doing that because we never do that.
Yep. What if his car could edit it for him as he drove? Like, you made a mistake, sir. Like, oh, crap, you're right.
Someday, Jimmy.
Someday. Anyway, let's talk about the history of black. Mark Rosewater says, each color's view of the world is heavily influenced by the thing it values most. And the thing that black values most above anything else is just straight, hardcore power. Yeah, power. They're realists. They're individualists. They want control. They want to thrive and beat the system. No restrictions. I think at any cost is sort of a key defining factor of black, because they will do whatever they can to get something done, because they're not afraid to risk it all, sort of thing. They're not afraid to do the things that you might shy away from. Sort of like the Sith,
Yeah, they're very Sith-like. They're something Morrow likes to say is that they're amoral, not immoral.
Yes.
So we think of black as evil, but evil is really immoral. Mm-hmm. Evil has a connotation, good and evil. An immoral act is something where something's wrong, but you do it anyway. In fact, maybe you do it because it's wrong. Amoral means that you don't actually believe in right and wrong. So you think that anything you can do, you're allowed to do.
Yeah. Sort of you get to exploit the system in a lot of ways. It's interesting because black is one of my favorite colors, I realize. I'm always trying to think if I'm Temur or Grixis, and I think I'm actually more weighted towards Grixis because it does have Timmy, Spike, and Johnny aspects to it.
For sure.
Yeah, like for instance, you can recur a creature in the graveyard and put it under the battlefield under your control. That feels very Timmy, But that's also filled with combos and stuff, and that's very Johnny. And then the Spike mentality of at any cost winning, like I'm gonna win no matter what. I'm gonna do what it takes. It's super Spike. So it's cool. It's got a little bit of everything in it, and we're gonna keep talking about this throughout the episode. But black, because it is willing to sacrifice and do whatever it needs to do to get stuff done, generally does not have restrictions. And in EDH, especially with a higher life total and a longer game, black has, I think, just a higher power level in general.
Well, black can sort of do everything. So we talk about what each color's like, what they're best at. Like green's best at ramp, and blue's best at card draw, and red's best at damage and aggro. And this gets down to what's black best at. Black actually has its fingers in a lot of different pies, because
color pies.
Yeah, black's philosophy is that I can do that, but the cost may be a little bit higher for me. Mm-hmm. So I might have to pay life, or I might have to sacrifice a creature. But if I am willing to do those things, then I can get access to a wider range of powers.
Yeah.
So black's sort of like, I can do everything, but everything might have a downside. That's one of the things about black is they don't find anything morally repugnant. Mm-hmm. So like white might be like, listen, I'm not raising any zombies up from the dead.
Yeah.
I'm not going to just kill somebody because
or
that's
I'm
against the law.
Sacrifice my own guy to do this thing.
Yeah, I'm not going to. In fact, that's a really good example. What's white's philosophy about sacrificing? White's willing to sacrifice itself to help others.
Yeah.
Well, black's willing to sacrifice others to help itself.
Until you combine the two colors, and then you just have some wonky, crazy creatures.
Then you got to forget about it.
Forget about it, yeah. So like we said, black achieves its goals and of achieving power through very self-centered means. There's nothing taboo or too far for black. And in the history of Magic, they have the best singular removal in the game with like go for the throat. In limited, it's always kill X creature.
Yeah, Doomblade is the classic.
Doomblade, yeah. And black is also happy to spend any cost to do it. And they also there's like great card draw spells in black with Read the Bones, Sign in Blood. There's
usually the card draw in black deals damage to you.
Yeah.
You can think of it as like the organ trade, not organ trade. So like trading your kidney, something we find morally repugnant, at least here in the U.S. As far as like selling your kidney to another person for money. But black would be totally willing to do that, whereas white would be like, well, I'll give it to somebody I know or a family member, which is what we like to do in the U.S. And any developed nation basically doesn't allow organ trade. But anyway, that philosophy of like, no, I'll cut off my left finger for, a little bit of knowledge, or I'll sell my soul for this specific cell.
Liliana is the perfect example of that. She'll do a demonic pact. And it may result in her dying.
She'll sell her soul to 4 different demons to get the power she wants.
Hey, if they're buying, she's selling.
Yep.
So I always like to look back at Unlimited or Alpha Beta and see what the first black cards were. And Animate Dead, to the surprise of no one, is an original black card, which is basically, it's like this weird enchantment that when it comes in the battlefield, you can enchant a creature card out of the graveyard, and then if an Animate Dead ever leaves, then you have to sacrifice the creature, but you get to grab a creature from the graveyard, and this has been around since Alpha.
These were one of the first cards that we ever had arguments about in my playgroup because
the wording on it's so bad in the original version.
Well, and one of the early ways that we would play it is you would draw your first card per turn and not play a land. Mm-hmm. Then you go to your discard phase. You have 8 cards. You discard a huge creature. Then on turn 1, you play a land. On turn 2, you play a land, and then you play Animate Dead and get the huge creature back. And early in Magic, it was unclear. People would be like, no, it never died.
Right. That doesn't matter.
The way the wording worked on the cards, if you read Alpha and Beta cards, they're crazy. And so we would have huge arguments. I'd be like, no, it's in the graveyard. I can animate it. And it's Animate Dead. It never died. Like, you can't do that. And we'd have these huge arguments. Turns out I was right, but...
Man, that must have felt so broken back in the day.
Oh, yeah, because you just get some, quote-unquote huge. Huge back then was like a 5/5, but, creature out on turn 2.
Well, you get like Lore of the Pit, because that was an alpha, right?
Yeah, that's a bad one, though, because it makes you sacrifice a creature every upkeep.
That's true.
You get like Crawworm or something, because we didn't have a ton of expensive cards. I mean, people don't remember or know, but, back in the day, nobody was buying booster boxes of this stuff. You were buying like 6 packs.
Yeah. At most.
Yeah.
Or like one of those starter pack things.
Yeah, exactly.
Dark Ritual is another key card, and it's another thing that black can do, which is ramp. 1 black, add black to your mana pool at instant speed.
Classic, and something they've gone away from a little bit. Red does this more now than black, but black does ramp in other ways too.
Yeah, like black will double your mana in a lot of ways, or get extra use out of swamps. Demonic Tutor. It's been around since the beginning. It's a tutor. Black is also very powerful because it's able to search stuff up.
Yeah, black is very surgical in the way that it card draws.
Surgical extraction.
Also, yeah. It and the way it discards, which we'll talk about in a minute, but it likes to, rather than just draw a ton of cards, which is what blue does, black's going to be like, no, I want to draw this specific card.
Yeah. There's also Drain Life, which black takes life from you and gives it to itself. So black has the ability to suck life out and also gain life, which would be like, wait, black can't do that. It's like, no, black definitely can steal some life. Mind Twist. Oh, God, this card is brutal. X and black, target player discards X cards at random. Usually you just do their whole hand.
Just with a couple of Dark Rituals, it used to be incredibly broken on turn 1. It's brutal. Black used to be early on in Magic that it would make you discard cards at random. And now we've moved more towards Thoughtseize. Mm-hmm. And like I was saying, things that literally say, well, let me look at your hand. Oh, that one.
Yeah. That's pretty broken. And there's also stuff like Pestilence. So black has the ability to ping everyone for damage as well.
Yeah, Pestilence is an enchantment. For every black you pay, it does 1 damage to each creature and each player.
This is actually probably one of the most powerful EDH cards.
It's very powerful, kind of underutilized, at least in our play group. The enchantment does go away if there are no creatures on the board. That's kind of a downside, but the effect is very profound, especially since it hits players.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely hits players as well as every creature. You can pretty much kill most everything.
In any limited environment, it's the most bonkers broken thing ever.
Yeah, exactly. All you have to do is just it's kind of like in chess where if you're 1 pawn ahead, then you're fine. In Pestilence, if you're 1 life ahead, then you got it.
Fine,
yeah, you're totally fine. And so it's funny because these are the cards that are all in alpha, and look at the range of stuff it can do. You can bring stuff out of the graveyard, you can ramp, you can search cards from your library, you can gain life, you can make people discard cards, you can mass board wipe, and you can do this all in black. Like, try doing all these things with red. Red would be like you play a Hill Giant and you can burn someone out.
That's it.
And like, yeah, and maybe like Wheel of Fortune or something. But like outside of that, black clearly from the beginning has already had elements of all of it. And I think it's really easy to design for. Not really easy, but more easy to design for because black is able to do these things, and it's just about finding the downsides when it does it. So what black has evolved to mean today, we've talked about this already, unconditional removal. It's a staple in Limited. If black doesn't have 1 or 2 just destroy target creature or destroy target non-black creature, then the set is not going to function as well.
Yeah, and the way that this differentiates itself is that like red will have a spell that does a certain amount of damage to a creature, and then white will probably these days have an enchantment that exiles a creature,
or locks them down and stops them from attacking.
But the creature comes back if the enchantment goes away, and then black will have just a destroy target creature or destroy target non-black creature.
Yeah.
That's usual. Black did have terror in the original alpha also.
Right, terror,
so it has been good at this since the beginning. It's just we've upped the cost now, usually.
Yeah, nothing is cheap to do.
Yeah, it's not 2 mana anymore, generally.
It's like 5 or 6. And if it's less than that, then it's like Hero's Downfall, where it's 1 black, which makes it a little harder to cast.
But they added Planeswalkers to that one as an option, so it's sort of like, in some ways, more powerful.
Yep. Black is also the key one-sided board wipes. So Decree of Pain in Garrick's Wake.
Wait, Decree of Pain is all creatures.
Oh, you're right.
I know
I'm
the
sorry.
one you're thinking about.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the it's Overwhelming Forces actually.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that one from
which is the
P3K.
one-sided Decree of Pain, basically.
One-sided Decree of Pain, and you draw cards. Yeah, it's actually interesting because Decree of Pain is very good, even if you're wrecking your own board, because you get to recover from it more than anyone else.
Of course, black is like, I don't care. I'll lose all my creatures and draw cards for them because I don't care about my creatures. I just want to be strong.
Yeah, and you can cycle the Decree of Pain too. That's why I listed it. Overwhelming Forces is the board wipe I was thinking of. It's very high mana cost like in Garrick's Wake, but they're one-sided board wipes, which you don't see too often.
Yeah, Overwhelming Forces, you choose a player, destroys all creatures that player controls, and then you draw a card for each of those.
Yep.
In Garrick's Wake just says, destroy all creatures and planeswalkers you don't control.
Yeah.
That is just incredibly strong. In fact, again, another card we don't see a lot in our play group, but we should. I mean, it's 9 mana, but
we get to 9 mana.
It's
all
Cyclonic
the time.
Rift.
Yeah.
Basically, it's that power level.
Yeah. Death Touch is also something that black definitely has a lot of these days. Sometimes Wizards likes to move away from keywords. I think Hexproof is slowly going away, but Death Touch is something that they really like to include in most sets.
And it really hits the flavor aspect of black because it's the type of thing that most of the other colors would find morally repugnant, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you're in a duel, like if it's 2 knights and they're fighting, there's like this chivalry honor thing going on. Well, if one of them's black, they're like, no, I'll poison my sword. That way I only have to nick you and I win. Why the heck, But
and you can be
else
1,000 times bigger than me and I'll still kill you.
Yeah, it's like, who's the guy? It's Oberyn Martell when he fought the Mountain in Game of Thrones. But most civilized society would look down on that and say, like, well, that's not the honorable way to win. Black's like, I don't care. I won.
Yeah, I don't care about what is honor.
What is honor worth? What does that buy me?
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing.
Black has definitely kept up with the discard effects as well, but they've evolved into things like Myojin of Night's Reach, which is an extremely powerful card. Liliana of the Veil, where a bunch of the Lilianas do this, where both players have to discard a card, or all players do. Sadistic Hypnotist. And of course, Thoughtseize, Inquisition of Kozilek, and all those cards as well.
Those pinpoint.
Yeah, pinpoint discard 1.
Mm-hmm. They actually also do a different form of discard. I guess it's closer to mill, like Surgical Extraction, which actually pulls the cards out of their library that you name.
Yeah. Not as useful in EDH because it's always trying to find a bunch of copies of one card. But
I think it is still useful, especially if you
if you know they have a win condition or an infinite combo. Like
or
if I was
a
playing
Prophet of
Kiki-Jiki,
Crufix or something you might be able to pull out. Or there's always going to be some like high impact card you can take out, like the card they're most likely to tutor for. Yeah. I'm not saying those are great cards, but I do think they're usable. Speaking of mill, it's not on the list, but that's another thing that Black does, although they've moved away from the pure mill more towards the Surgical Extraction stuff. But it's definitely in the color wheel for Black. Speaking of them being able to do everything.
Yeah. Sacrifice matters. Edict effects, so Shieldred, Attrition, where you sacrifice a creature to kill someone else, Fleshbag Marauder, everyone has to sack a creature. Like, these are all so powerful.
Yeah, and it's actually named after, we call them edict effects because they're named after a card.
Diabolic Edict.
Yes, so...
From Tempest.
Which is a way to get around hexproof. It's very strong, very, very strong against Voltron.
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons I'd say that black is so strong in EDH is because it has not only the way to reach out and kill a creature, but it can also take care of the problematic creatures with things like edict effects.
Yeah, it's really powerful, the fact that you can get around. That's why I love Sigarda so much, is because edict effects are very powerful, and if you have someone that says, like, no, you can't make me do that. It's interesting because it's like ways to get around killing stuff. Ways to get around doing something is always an important thing in EDH. Yep. Like, I did this and I made them do this, but in a different convoluted way. But it was actually more effective because they had protection against all the normal, regular ways that they might expect or whatever.
Well, and Sigarda is also hexproof. So instead, a hexproof creature, strong as it is, like Narset, very strong. But then one of the weaknesses of that is edict effects.
Yeah, very
and Sigarda says, one of the weaknesses of hexproof, I don't have it.
Yep, I don't even need to have it. Give me a break.
Give me a break, man.
Give me a break. All right, let's talk about some strengths and weaknesses. So, of course, to make the color wheel work, each color has to be balanced evenly, and you might be thinking like, whoa, if black can do everything, then what the heck? How is this not the most overpowered color in the game? It's blue. Just kidding.
Because not every color can be blue. That's why.
Everyone is aspiring to be blue at the end of the day, I suppose. Even Jimmy the Red sometimes is like, I would love to just get a little is it in me.
Well, notice the one thing we didn't say black could do is counterspell.
Yeah, counterspell. So the strengths for black, we've covered most of these already. They can do most everything in Magic. They can tutor stuff up unconditionally into your hand without revealing it to your opponent. There's lots of control there, and there's ramp. And they can attack players from a lot of different angles, whether you're getting rid of their hand, you're doing some stuff with their graveyard, you're getting stuff back from their graveyard, you're doing unconditional removal. But as a result, black is actually the most isolated of colors. And you'll notice that a lot of the cards we talk about have 3 or 4 black pips in them. So it's like 5 black, black, black. And that's really hard to cast if you're a deck that's splashing black. You can't just throw in Mikaeus, and be like, yeah, sure, no problem, because it's a really hard spell to cast.
Yeah, really good point. Black is the most isolated of colors, and it's also the one that is the most affinity for other black cards. So many of black's effects say, do this for every swamp you have. In fact, a lot of its ramp is like, every swamp now taps for an extra black.
Yeah.
It doesn't make every land you have tap for an extra black. So what's that make you want to do? It makes you want to include more black and less of the other colors. That's why mono black is so powerful and so strong, because black naturally wants to be very devoted to black. Like a lot of their cards, have to do with how many pips you've got, how many swamps you've got, that kind of stuff.
Yep, definitely like it. Black also kind of has a limited ability to kill artifacts and enchantments.
Well, enchantments, it just can't do much about it at all. It's only got a few cards that can do anything. Artifacts also has a very big problem with, and those are two things that are like very powerful in our format.
Yeah, and a lot of colors have a little bit of trouble doing this in one way or the other. It's actually interesting because the cards are so powerful, or you can have really powerful artifacts and enchantments. It's interesting that all the colors have a little bit of time struggling with this usually, or they'll do it in different ways. Like blue will be really good at bouncing stuff, but it may not permanently remove it ever.
Well, white and green, they destroy those things, but red is even worse than black maybe at getting rid of that stuff.
For enchantment specifically, yeah. Red's good at artifacts. Black is also the most likely to just kill itself. Demonic Pact comes to mind.
Yeah, it's true. It's, black, another personality trait is just arrogance.
Yeah.
I think. And so a lot of this comes from black's like, I can take it. I can take a couple of damage to get a couple of extra cards. Like, I'm willing to pay that price. I can take it. I'm powerful enough. And you can get yourself into trouble with things like Necropotence.
Yeah.
We've seen that, like, that's a very powerful card, very strong card. It lets you pay life to draw cards, but it doesn't let you draw cards naturally anymore. And, we've been in games with people where they've got Necropotence out, but after a little while, they're like, I need to draw the card that gets rid of it. Necropotence. Like, and if they don't, they're like, I'm down to 13. Yeah, I had a ton of cards, but, now somebody can just, offhanded kill me.
Yeah. That's why Marchese is great with black, is because you want your life total to be lower than your opponent's, so you can really get the maximum benefit of dethrone.
Yeah, just think about that. You want your life total to be low.
Yeah.
But that's definitely how black operates.
Yep. Fortunately, again, Commander, 40 life, which means paying life for stuff is not as significant. But if you're pure black and that's all you're doing, you're going to find yourself pretty close to death pretty quickly. All right, allied and enemy colors time. So we've actually talked about most of these already, except for one. We have not talked about Dimir, which is interesting. But if you guys, again, look at the back of a magic card, you'll see that the enemy pairs are the colors across the color wheel from black. There's two of them. There's Golgari with green and black and Orzhov. And then the allied pairs are next to black. So Dimir, black and blue, and Rakdos, black and red. And if you guys have listened to the other episodes, it should be making a lot more sense why these colors are allied or enemies and what they share in common and what they don't share in common. So to go over Golgari again, green and black, it's sort of life versus death. It's all about reanimation effects, but it's also all about like sort of this like the tainted forest kind of idea. Mm-hmm. And we talked about this too. It grows vertically, so green and black can make tokens, but usually it's trying to focus on making like one creature or one thing do a lot of stuff. Like Gerard Golgari Lich Lord is one of those great cards that
you sacrifice a creature and you have a few different effects, and that's definitely because green understands the life and death cycle. It's also like I think green is on board with the sort of survival of the fittest. In fact, that's one of their cards.
Yeah,
but black believes in that also. It believes be the strongest, and then you're allowed to do whatever you want. And green has that because green doesn't sit there and go like, is the lion allowed to eat the antelope? No, because it's survival of the fittest. That's the way the circle of life works and the food chain works, and black can get on board with that philosophy.
Black certainly respects that. What black doesn't like about green is sort of the idea that nature is the one that has the biggest power. That, you know, like sometimes it's just the order. You know, you can't survive if another bigger beast is chasing you down. Maybe it's your time to go. Black's like, no, I'm gonna find a way out of this.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a deal with a demon to come and fight on my side, and yeah, it might cost me like a piece of my soul or like one of my limbs, but whatever, I'll survive.
Yeah,
you know.
And I'm going to look totally rad doing it, so screw you, green.
And black is willing to sort of cavort with like the forces of evil, the zombies of the world, which green certainly would not like. Things like vampires and those dark creatures that aren't of nature.
Yeah, although they do kind of both share the life from death kind of aspect, where green has like, this creature dies, find another one and replace it. You know, the evolutionary leap idea. Right. Black is more like, yeah, they're coming back. Don't worry, they're coming back. They're going to be a little messed up on the other side, but they're coming back. Orzhov, white and black, very iconic pairing. It is not as simple as good and evil. There can be evil white characters as well, guys. Black also focuses on religion a lot, so there are a lot of clerics shared between the two.
Yeah, it's an interesting fact, but then when you think about it, if you think of white as like pure good religion where people are, where it's based on faith and compassion, well, black is like a cult where it's based on like taking the cult leader and making them powerful, and he's taking the power and brainwashing all the people under him. Well, that's very black.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot of fun to me. Because white cares about morality, it doesn't mean that black cares about immorality. So black, again, they are amoral, and I think white-black has a really interesting grasp on that because it's like selfless versus selfish. Both are sort of focused on the group, where white's all about the good of the group, and black is for, like, again, we said, like, they use the group for themselves instead of they sacrifice themselves for the group. So, Orzhov is all about like long game stuff, extorting, slowly winning the game over a grindier thing. Like Ghost Council of Orzhova is a really good example of that. Mm-hmm. It can keep flickering back in and draining you for life each time while sacrificing a creature to do so. Teysa is like, yo, don't even touch this. Get away from me. I'm going to tap these guys and exile you. And Pontiff of Blight. God, that card. I keep losing to that card, Josh.
Well, that was in Cube, but yeah, it makes basically all your creatures have extort. So now every spell that you cast, you just tack on like a little tax that everybody's got to pay a little bit of life, and you gain life every time you cast a spell. Yeah. It's incredibly powerful,
especially
but it's sneaky powerful.
Yeah, because everyone's like, oh, I just lose one life, but you don't notice that the guy just gained 5, or 4 or whatever. We've talked about, again, if you go to the Color Wheel White episode and the Color Wheel Green episode, we talk a lot more in depth about these enemy pairs, so we're not going to go too in depth about them right now. Allied pairs, though, Dimir is the one that we've never talked about before. It's black and blue.
And these two are very aligned.
Yeah. Much more so than I think even black and red.
Yeah,
black and blue are the...
I don't know if this is official. I mean, I don't work for Wizards, but I would say that black gets blue more than it gets any other color.
Yeah.
Maybe not the opposite, but
blue, yeah, it's because they're both they both have this relentless pursuit of something. You know,
they're both
blue is like
very
knowledge.
cunning.
Yeah, cunning. They like to play around the edges. They like to trick you and deceive you to achieve their own means.
They appreciate knowledge.
Yeah, and they definitely have this sort of like, well, it's kind of your fault for not catching on, isn't it?
Yeah.
Attitude, you know.
They're both, you know, cold and calculating. You know, black's a little bit more cutthroat.
Yeah.
But blue is willing to do what it takes, you know, if that makes logical sense to sort of get things done.
Yeah, I think blue can find the justification for what black does more than any other color. Like if black does something crazy to get something done, white will be like, that was completely
wrong.
Yeah.
Morally.
Oh my gosh, morally.
Yeah.
And blue's like, nice. Good
Blue's
one.
like, well, what was the result?
Yeah.
Blue might not like the calculated result because I'm not willing to pay that price, but they wouldn't necessarily question the morality of it.
Yeah, exactly. Black wants to control the world and subvert it, and blue wants to change the world. So you can tell already how similar these are. And like, no wonder Spikes love blue-black control. Like, no wonder that's always been an archetype.
It's the brain archetype. It's the, you know, when you play blue-black control, what you're saying is that I'm going to make more, there's going to be more decision points in a game, and that will favor the better player over the course of a game because the more decisions there are, the more likely you are to make more mistakes than me.
Yep.
So it's always like called to, you know, very good players.
Yeah, it's because it takes its time. It's very sneaky and subtle, and it plays for like those half percentage points in winning and stuff. It's really focused on all those little decision points. That's a really good point. Counterspell is also great because black now has access to sort of that one thing it didn't before. Mm-hmm. And I love that they copy creatures like Dimir Doppelganger is one of my favorite cards of all time, and they have card draw. Sometimes not at like a negative effect to black, like losing life because it's got blue in there, and they also can steal cards. So I mean, you can tell these two are so closely aligned. Ashiok Nightmare Weaver is a really good modern day example of what blue black is trying to do, where they'll exile cards off the top of your library and then eventually play them. Yeah. Yep. But it's also still like milling you slowly and really playing a control-y thing where it's like I might grab the best card out of your deck right now with Ashiok. Yeah. You never know. Yeah,
true. I think Una's clearly and easily the single best Dimir.
Queen of the Fae. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it's doing
so powerful.
Yeah, and it's doing mill plus making a bunch of tokens. But you know, a lot of times you mill somebody out and then kill somebody else with the tokens.
Yeah.
And Lazov is another like really strong Dimir general, which also has to do with mill. Mm-hmm. So mill is a very strong strategy with a blue-black in EDH.
Yeah.
Because that's just one thing they do really well.
Yep. And finally, we have Rakdos as the second allied pair. And no rules. College. Ice cream for breakfast. Do whatever we want.
Yeah, when you put red, who has no filter, basically, and just, you know, it just goes with their emotion. And then you put it with black, who has no morality, not immoral, but actually just doesn't believe in morality, then you get, whatever you want to do, whenever you want to do it. Totally 100%, like, if you can, you can.
Yep. There's like Hellbent with the mechanic, or like Unleash is a Rakdos mechanic where it's like, I don't want to block. I'm just going to fly at them as hard as I can with all these sweet +1/+1 counters or whatever, you know?
Well, it's a really interesting thing, right? Where as Rakdos, red takes away black's thinking ahead. Mm-hmm. It takes away its future planning a little bit. Whereas blue gives it more of that and takes away a little bit of its, spontaneity.
Yeah.
So all Rakdos is spontaneity, really, and all Dimir is calculation, so...
And put them together and you get Marchesa. Yeah. Olivia Voldaren is a great Rakdos commander. Same with just Rakdos, Lord of Riots. That card's awesome.
You know, it's interesting because Olivia, you would think would be blue because she turns things into vampires and then steals them. Yeah. But red is actually really good at stealing things. Mm-hmm. You don't think of it that way because it usually steals until end of turn, but that's not how black operates. Black thinks about the future.
Yeah.
So black is subverting that like threaten effect to be like, no, I turn it into something evil and then I take it for good.
Yep. That pretty much covers the allied and enemy pairs. Shards and wedges. Again, we will do a series, I guess, on all the shards and wedges because those are usually the most common commanders. At least I've seen. I I think I see 3-color commanders more than anything else. We have to ask Donald if that's the truth.
Yeah, I think it was because when we went down the list, like a Loro was number 1. And I think like there was a mono black. I forget who it was, but that was still like 4th or 5th.
Yeah.
So I would feel safe in saying that 3-color commanders are the most common. So
yeah, so we'll definitely talk about these shards and wedges for what black and of every color. I wonder how maybe we'll just do 1 shard at a time or 1 wedge at a time.
Maybe we'll do all the wedges, then all the shards, because there's 5 of each.
It's a heck of an episode. We'll get into it later.
Maybe we won't do that. Maybe we'll do it some other way.
All right, let's move on to our next topic for Color Wheel, how to best use black in EDH. Black's one of the best colors to pair with other ones. Like no qualms about what they're doing. Don't care how they're going to get it done. It's great. It feels like how I build EDH decks. Like, you know what? I'm going to put all this stuff in there because I got to get this thing I want to do. I want to do it, and I'm going to do it no matter what.
Yeah, black can fill in almost any gap, too.
Yeah.
So whatever other color or 2 colors you have with it, it can sort of fill in the weak points. So if you were pairing it with white, black can bring with it the card draw and the mana ramp and the tutoring. And the tutoring is obviously the biggest thing. And I know some people don't like tutors, but black, that's one of the best things for EDH that black brings to the table is just being able to go find specific cards in your deck.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yep. Edict effects too is just so good to pair with any color. And black has some of the most important things. They have board wipes. Outside of white, black is definitely right up there with some of the best board wipes in the game.
I mean, I think they're clearly second.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's no one else.
Yeah, I mean, red has some, blue has some mass bounce stuff.
They're all very
green has very little, but yeah, Damnation, Black Sun Zenith, Toxic Deluge.
Our number 1 card.
Toxic Deluge is actually as good as any board wipe that white has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it's the single best board wipe in the game.
Yeah, it might be, I don't know.
Until you're like dinging yourself for 15 to get rid of a giant whatever.
But it does get rid of indestructible threats.
Yep.
So
and for only 3 mana, no matter what, which is why I like it.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah. So green and black gives us some great strategies with popping out tokens and like using them to sacrifice them and stuff.
Just recursion in general, just playing with your graveyard, bringing things back, getting engines going that way. Black's very good at engines, right? Because it'll do sacrifice something, bring it back, sacrifice it again, bring it back. That's already that kind of loop Black's very good at.
Yeah, especially with like Mikaeus, the Unhallowed.
Yeah, and then you add things like Dictate of Erebos, and now suddenly I sacrifice a creature, bring it back, but everybody else has to sacrifice a creature because of the Dictate of Erebos or the Grave Pact. Yeah, Black's very good at getting sort of these repetitious loops going that aren't necessarily infinite, but they just are oppressive to the table to the point where nobody can keep a creature on the board except you.
Yeah, persist, I think, is a big black mechanic as well. Rakdos is definitely the better aggro pairing compared to Boros, I think.
No.
I'd much rather play a Rakdos deck than the Boros one in EDH.
I think that's true, actually, because in Boros, in EDH, there's no way to sort of keep that gas going with card draw, and you have trouble with ramping. But again, black can bring those things to the table for you, so that red can bring the bulk of the aggression, although black does have some, but black can cover you in those other areas of like removing key blockers and giving you enough card draw to keep going.
Yeah, definitely. I would, if you're playing black, Recursion and Reanimation, Grave Betrayal, a card like Living Death. These are all cards that you can play that really, if you play them correctly, and like Living Death, I think has to be one of the most powerful cards in the game.
Yeah, it's amazing. It just brings all things from the graveyard back into play.
And you can really stack it in your favor. You
just
can have
Gray Merchant with that is often enough to just win the game.
Yeah.
It's just, you just put like 20 pips out. Gray Merchant says deal damage to each opponent equal to the amount of your devotion to black, and then you gain that much life. So we've seen tons of games where somebody just does sort of a living end type of effect, and then just wipes everybody off the table.
Yeah, it's great seeing like also a card like Kakusho being looped a lot.
Yep.
It's just one of those things that just is slowly going to win you the game because you're gaining a bunch more life than everyone is than each individual opponent is losing.
It's just another thing maybe we didn't touch on earlier. But black's very good at hitting all other of your opponents at the same time.
Yeah.
Sort of indiscriminately doing 2 damage to everybody, and you gain, you gain that amount of life or something like that.
Yep. Again, removal, board wipes. We have the best, some of the best single target unconditional removal at instant speed in black. We also have Damnation. It sucks how expensive it is. I know, it's a real bummer. But it's a black board
not
wipe.
CMC, but has $1 price.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like a 10.
You don't need it.
Board wipe.
You don't need it.
No, I would rather run in Garrick's Wake.
Yeah, Toxic Deluge, Black Sun Zenith. You can get a hold of these other cards. Now, if you have Damnation, that's great. And if you want to really optimize your deck and you don't care about the dollar amount, then that's fine. But you don't
Otherwise,
need
just pick
Damnation.
up Languish, I guess.
Yeah. The funny thing I would say about the pinpoint single target removal is that black's very good at it, but in our format, because it's just destruction based, it's inherently a little bit weaker than, white really has Path to Exile, Swords to Plowshare, which it's funny because white ends up being in EDH maybe only better at pinpoint removal than black.
Yeah.
Just because those cards affect a lot of the cards that would, indestructible is just a thing. A lot of people make their threats indestructible. So, but if you're running the ones like Hero's Downfall,
Yeah.
which kills a creature or a planeswalker, now you've got versatility in there. I think it's therefore it's more worth it. But nobody's going to run Doomblade.
No. I've seen people do it. I'm always just like, you're lucky you've had the target. Although, I mean, there's always going to be a target for the most part.
But is it the target you really need to get rid of?
And do you really want to throw it to their graveyard? If they have a million ways of getting it back.
Yeah, that's true, because Exile also gets away around Graveyard Recursion, another reason why Path to Exile and Swords are so good.
Yeah. And, of course, once again, tutors. That's whether you like it or not, black, one of its greatest strengths is getting that demonic tutor in there, getting that vampiric tutor, getting any of the tutors that let you search for a lot of cards.
I mean, I would say it's the single best thing it does for the purposes of EDH.
Yeah. Some people would completely argue the opposite, too, which is funny.
Well, I think it's hard to argue that that's the best thing it does. Now, some people would argue that that's not good for the format.
Yeah.
Which I can understand, but I think even Sheldon would say that's the most powerful thing that it does.
Definitely. Okay, next section, cards you might not think of. Mind Slash, which is just a discard spell. I think really any discard spell. It's one of those things kind of like land destruction that people kind of shy away from. And it makes sense. It can feel very mean and targeted if one person just has to get rid of their hand and they've been sitting there and they can't wait to play their cool cards. They're like, they're mana screwed and they're holding 7 spells and you make them discard 7 or whatever. It's like, oh boy, that's brutal.
Yeah, but I do think that in our format, so often there's a moment in time in the game where somebody is just holding an obscene amount of cards.
Yeah.
And in those cases, you're totally justified in taking as many of them out of their hand as you can.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's sort of like the spirit of the format is like maybe you don't do that to somebody on, an early turn when they're not doing anything broken and they just happen to have 6 cards in their hand.
Do it when you know they're about to play. If they untap, they're going to do their win condition or whatever.
I mean, do it whenever. I'm not telling people how to play the game. I'm just saying if your question is under what circumstances somebody going to get really mad or not.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go. Pretty much.
What's the next one? Necrologia.
Logia, yeah, an instant speed draw spell.
Yeah, it says cast Necrologia only during your end step. That's kind of weird.
It's really bizarre.
As an additional cost to cast Necrologia, pay X life, and then it says draw X cards.
Draw X cards. You can draw 40. You can draw 39 cards if you can cast this with that full life in EDH.
Yeah, you'd be nuts to do it, but you could totally do it. Yeah, the fact that it sort of is available at whatever amount you want is good. The fact that you can only cast it during end step is kind of a downside.
Yeah, it's right before your cleanup step too, notably. So it's like this weird card. But I mean, if you can get around this, the effect is clearly very powerful. Mm-hmm. Like a Reliquary Tower makes this very nice. There's Cannibalize, 1 in the black for a sorcery. Choose 2 target creatures controlled by the same player. Are you ready? Exile one of those creatures, and then put 2 +1/+1 counters on the other. So at first you're like, oh, this sucks. You have to put +1/+1 counters on the guy. No, for 1 in the black, you can exile a creature in black.
And is that much worse than Path to Exile, which gives them a land?
Yeah.
Like you just have to buff one of their other creatures. Yeah. A lot of times you can find a spot where they've got a token or they've just got a small guy or they've got a utility creature they're never going to attack with anyway.
Yep.
You get rid of the big problem threat and buff up something that doesn't matter if it's buffed or not.
I want to play this in my Marchesa deck because there occasionally may be a time where I need to target myself with this. And put some +1/+1 counters on the guy.
That actually seems like a really good idea because additional versatility, sometimes you can use it on yourself.
Yep. Beseech the Queen, one of my favorite black tutors.
And this is one of those sort of discriminatory cards we were talking about where it wants you to be playing like a lot of black, right?
Yeah, because it's a black mana cost, but you can also pay 2 colorless instead of black. So total CMC is actually 6. So you could pay like 4 colorless and 1 black, or 2 colorless and 2 black, or just black. But specifically, it doesn't punish you for paying more for it because you search your library for a card with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of lands you control. So if you are playing 6 for this, then awesome. But if you have like 20 lands and you draw us in the late game, you can tutor anything you want in your deck for just 3 mana. Which is pretty good.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Pretty good. I don't know who the queen is that we're beseeching here, but it says those who hear her go mad with inspiration.
Is it Queen of the Damned?
Yeah, definitely.
Little Anne Rice. Okay, so do we want to talk about our personal favorite?
Yes. I want to build a Geth deck. I want to build a Geth hand disruption deck. It's going to be no one's going to like me.
I was looking at you like, really?
Yeah, Geth Lord of the Vault is a 4 black. He's a legendary zombie creature. Vincent actually has a Geth deck.
Yep.
But he doesn't really cast them too often. For X in the black, you can put target artifact or creature card with converted mana cost X within the opponent's graveyard from an opponent's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control tapped. Then that player puts the top X cards of his or her library into a graveyard. So it's a mill effect on the black card, and also you can there's so many times when like by turn 10, everyone's Soul Ring or Thran Dynamo is just in the Garbo. And this is awesome because for 1 mana more, you get to just start grabbing everyone's, sweet artifacts that were board wiped away 5 turns ago. So I really want to build a deck that also, this is so mean. It's like a discard. I want people to discard their hands and then drop like their Gilded Lotus into the graveyard. And I have a ton of ramps, so I just start stealing the sweetest artifacts. I grab their sword.
The crazy grin he's got on his face as he's talking about this. It's making me really scared.
It would be a very spiky black deck because as soon as you make one person start discarding cards in their hand, everyone's going to look at you and be like, really?
Yeah, because they don't want to be next.
They don't want to be next, yeah. So Geth is my next experiment.
Oh, yeah? I'm gonna make Skithrix. So there.
Oh, my goodness.
Skithrix,
Josh going down a truly dark path here.
Craig would be proud of me. I'm not necessarily going to do this, but I just think Skithrix is a powerful commander.
Yeah.
Skithrix, the Blight Dragon, costs 3 and 2 black, so 5 CMC for a 4/4 flying dragon with Infect.
Yes.
As we know, Infect says this creature deals damage to creatures in the form of -1/-1 counters and to players in the form of poison counters.
Take 10, you die.
So if you got 10 poison, you're dead. You can pay a black. Skithrix gains haste, so that's just brutal because as soon as you got 6 mana, you can
6 mana 4/4 out of the command zone, yeah.
And pay 2 black, regenerate Skithrix. So hard to get rid of, and so that if you buff him up and hit somebody, Skithrix is the kind of general that you play on turn 5, hit somebody, and then kill him on turn 6.
Yeah.
Or play on turn 6.
You can probably play him like turn 4 in black just because you have so many.
You can even play him out and enchant him on the same turn and give him haste and kill somebody out of nowhere.
Pretty good.
Yeah, seems all right.
He seems like also one of those great, just like if you have ways of buffing him up, just like a hidden win condition in your hand if you're playing mono black.
So you can just suddenly, boom.
Yep, boom. Like, sorry, dude. Sorry,
like,
Craig. Hey,
Craig.
remember how I stole?
Sorry, Craig.
Remember how I stole your Thran Dynamo? Well, I'm going to use the cast Skithrix from my hand. And it's over, buddy.
Yeah, good night.
Yep. Let's wrap things up here, guys. Read Mark Rosewater's articles. I'll say this over and over again. Like, we are just attempting to really do a good job describing what the color wheel is about. I think it's really fun to experiment with enemy and ally colored pairings. Figure out, like, oh, man, this deck is so just not where I want it to be as a 2-color deck. Like, well, maybe you need to add a 3rd color. And what is that 3rd color going to be? Maybe it's black. It should be black. Or maybe it's because you already have blue in there, I'm assuming, and red. So you're playing Marchesa. Dang it. Yeah, I said this before, but every color is a key ingredient to a dish. So figure out what combo of cards.
So what kind of chef do you want to be?
Yeah. A killer chef. Pretty much it's it. I like black. Black's one of my favorite colors. It does a little bit of everything, and I love the flavor.
I need to play it more. I mean, I have black in some decks, but I think I need to explore it a little more. As we were doing this, I was realizing, like, man, black can do a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Skithrix, baby. Woo!
All right, time for the end step where we talk about something cool outside the world of Magic.
This is a co-end step. We both
we have a question that we need to pose to the audience.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jimmy and I, we're trying to come up with a fitness competition between the two of us. Now, there's an issue. The issue is that I want to lose weight because I'm really fat. Jimmy doesn't want to because he's super skinny. He wants to bulk up a little bit.
Yep.
So we want to know if anybody's got a way out there that we could have some sort of a bet or a competition. In fact, we'll do it on air.
Yep.
Probably follow along with it on air. Maybe there'll be some sort of prize at the end of it.
Yeah, we'll add a new end step called the gains, whether we have positive gains or not.
Yeah, or maybe there's some way to keep track of it or whatever, but we don't know how to set up the competition in a way that makes it fair.
Yeah,
so that both of us have to go to the
weighted.
gym every day, but it can't be Jimmy losing weight because he doesn't have a pound to lose, and it definitely can't be me gaining weight because I'm already doing that. So we need some way to set up this competition. We're hoping that one of our thousands of listeners knows a way. Please tweet it at us, or you can email us at commandcast@rocketjump.com.
Yeah, something specifically that we can also compete with each other and like. Do have something that we can say like, oh yeah, well you did this, well I did this, and then not be like, oh you can't compare those two. But
it needs to be something where like at the end of 10 or 12 weeks or something, we can measure it and say, oh he won or he won.
Yeah.
So something that's fair. I don't know what it is, but we've got a lot of you. We're asking the brain trust.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't have me running a mile.
Even 1 mile.
Not even one, man. I hate running. I'll run, but I hate running.
But not a mile.
I mean, I used to do track and field and
what
all
did
that
you... I hate running too. I'll play basketball.
Oh, yeah. I'm so bad at basketball. I'll get better
running.
at basketball.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is running.
Yeah.
But you get to wait every now and then. Sometimes you can just chill. You get 4 seconds in the
It
key.
fools me because I'm like, oh, I got to defend this guy, and then I got to dribble down there.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel like I'm running, but I am.
And you're playing a game, so
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
Although if I played basketball tomorrow, I would fall over dead after 5 minutes.
I remember the first time I did Krav Maga with Freddie and those guys back when they were in college. They're like, yeah, come to one Krav Maga class with us. And I was like, sure. I like threw up.
I almost died. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, everything was going white within 10 minutes. And the coach was like, what are you doing? I'm like, I can't throw bows right now, man. I'm dying. So figure out something.
Help us out, guys.
And as long as it doesn't involve us boxing each other or anything either, because I would most definitely just get destroyed.
I don't know. You just dance around for a minute and a half until I'm dead tired.
Yeah, I'll play the ropes.
Rope-a-dope.
Moving on to the cleanup step. Our sister podcast for the show is The Masters of Modern. Alex Kessler and Ben Bateman talk about all things modern. They had a really good episode, actually, where they brought on some Ruben Bressler and Josh Sutherland to talk about
Joshy.
Hearthstone versus Magic and whether or not it's a competitor. And Josh used to work at Blizzard as well, so they have some really great insight in that episode. So they got some great content. You can follow them at the MMCast on Twitter or at rocketjump.com/theMMCast.
Our editor is Eli Cuevas, and special thanks to Geoffrey Palmer for the Living Card animations. You can find him at Living Cards MTG.
Woo!
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening.
And we'll see you next time.
Peace.
Thank you for your attention. For further inquiries, send an email to commandcast@rocketjump.com or ask us on Twitter at JFWong and at Josh Lee Kwai. See you later, alligator.
Greetings, humans.